Well, England have qualified for the World Cup semi-finals with a crushing 10-wicket win over South Africa. One win, it's all it takes. All it takes. I'm Cameron Ponsonby. I'm joined by Firdose Moonda. This is the final word. It's brought to you by Lacuna Sports. And well, Firdose, that was a tough day for South Africa. And you're going to summarise all 34 overs of cricket we had in 30 seconds.
I don't actually need 30 seconds today. Yesterday was my debut and I got 32 seconds. Today, I'm only going to take 1 second to summarize the game. Disaster. That is
Correct.
all I have to say for now.
How did this happen? Because I was getting ready for some English debacles. There's been English cricket is in a funny spot at the moment, and after South Africa made the final last year in the T20 edition, it felt like from afar, kind of the nations are going in contrasting directions. And then we arrive here. I was ready for this banana skin for England. Banana skin makes it sound like South Africa or the minnows. That's not quite right. But in the context of a World Cup where you can afford to lose 2, maybe even 3 games and get to the semi-finals, this was a massive game for both teams. Let's start with South Africa because you are the expert in this realm. Did you predict this at all? Where has this come from? Is this a performance in keeping with anything we've seen from the team recently?
No, I'm really, really surprised and in fact a little bit embarrassed because I talked South Africa up hugely before the tournament. It's not something I normally do. I'm usually quite realistic, but we've been swept up in this wave of South African success, London, Lords, and all the things that have happened since then. And this has just come against the run of play. I suppose if I take a step back and just look at it in the context of the way South Africa have performed in ODI cricket over the last year, maybe it's not that unexpected. So they've lost 7 of their last 8 ODIs against England. And in the last year, the only teams they've beaten are West Indies, who are not at this World Cup, and they played them in May, and Pakistan, who were bowled out for 129 by Bangladesh yesterday. So they haven't actually played teams of a very high standard, and they haven't won against any big teams. They did beat England in an ODI in December last year, but then they went on to lose the series. So their ODI cricket has been up and down, and they're under a new coach in Mandla Mashimbi. I'm not quite sure that they've got their plans right. Today, for example, Anari Dirksen not playing was quite a surprise. She scored 100 in Sri Lanka as well as 2 half centuries in the series they've played there recently. She's a good batter. She offers something with the ball, not that the bowlers mattered today. But I really would have expected to see her in the lineup. Instead, what you've got is Sune Lees at number 3, and I am very unconvinced of her abilities at number 3. And then you've got Sanalo Jafta at number 6. Sanalo Jafta. I mean, she scored 22 and she looked okay on the drive today, but I don't think she's a number 6 batter. And nothing about her history in the game has showed us that. So I think their lineup is just a little bit lopsided. The only other theory I've got as to what happened, and it sounds like a silly theory, but I'm going to have to posit it, is that they didn't expect Linsey Smith to open the bowling. And when they saw her, they thought, oh my goodness, what is happening? And that is the reason she dismissed South Africa's best 3 batters, because there was nothing much happening, right? I mean, England just got the matchup right, Linsey Smith against the top order. It wasn't as though it was turning. It wasn't as though it was seaming. It wasn't. The pitches have been good, and we expect them to be good. And I just think South Africa had a complete, I don't even want to say brain freeze. Like, they just had basically 6 brain farts in the first 10.1 overs, and they were 38 for 6, and then it ended up being a whole lot of poo. Can I say that?
You can, absolutely. It's accurate. It's correct. Some statistics to throw your way. So this was the shortest non-rain affected ODI for England ever. That's courtesy of Hypercourse. 34.5 overs the whole match was completed in. Sanalo Jafta, as you mentioned, she was up at number 6. Not a very pretty stat for her. I think in 45 international innings she's played, she has made 20 just 4 times, 5 including today. That's across both formats. And yes, she has a number of not outs in there. She tends to bat down the order, but it speaks to why it was a surprise or a change of that. The coaching staff must have seen something in her and kind of gone like, we are now backing her to go higher up the order. But the player I want to focus on, who you just mentioned there, is Linsey Smith, because this today was the first time she ever opened the bowling in an ODI, and did it work. She dismissed Laura Wolvaert first up, caught and bowled. She then got Sune Lees before she'd even conceded a run, so her figures were 2 for none, I believe. And then she added Marizanne Kapp as well. Another stat courtesy of Hypercourse. I steal a lot of Hypercourse stats. They're very useful. It's the first time that those 3 players have been dismissed in the same innings by a single bowler. Linsey Smith was phenomenal. 4 overs, 2 maidens,
Yeah.
3 for 7. And this was a good confirmation bias day for me because I love Linsey Smith. I just think she's such an effective cricketer. She's a very kind of... Her and Akil Hussain are such unsexy bowlers that produce such sexy results. They just bowl slow left arm swing into the stumps. And Linsey Smith, another confirmation bias thing for me, just hits the stumps. I think she hit the stumps with pretty much half of her deliveries. And I'm a big believer that everyone in cricket is fundamentally bad. And if you bowl at the stumps, they will miss it and they will get out. And the game was pretty much over by the time her spell was done. They were 19 for 4, 31 for 5. And it felt a bit out of kilter because I was reading and watching some previews of the World Cup. And the big thing about South Africa's batting lineup was like the kind of power was one this preview was talking about, being like, these are players that have like the big shots, they can take the attack to a team. And against some straight spin, she bowled very well. We didn't see any shots. It just kind of, they went nowhere.
Yeah, that's the big issue. So when you mention the kind of bowler that she is, you make it sound quite plain and simple, which, with no disrespect to Linsey Smith, that is kind of what it is. It's plain and simple. And I think what we saw from South Africa was a complete absence of footwork. I wanted to say like minimal use or lack of, but it was just absence of footwork. So Marizanne Kapp, they were all saying so far back in the crease. Marizanne Kapp's probably the best example of that. She kind of thought about, should I get forward to defend this? And then didn't, just stayed back in the crease and was bowled by Linsey Smith. And the same for Laura Wool, thought it was a false stroke and she got a leading edge. Sunelise the same, absolutely no footwork. Tasman Brits the same. Of course, she wasn't one of Linsey Smith's victims, but the top 6 just didn't show any kind of ability to move around the crease. And I'm very surprised by that. That's not the South African team that we know. We saw a little later in the innings, in fact, that Sanala Jafta started coming forward. And as she did, she was able to get a couple of drives away. And she's not, as we've said, necessarily the best example of South Africa's batting. I just want to go back to the point you made about why she's up the order without detracting from Linsey Smith, which is that the reason she's up the order is that South Africa actually need another batter. You can't carry a wicketkeeper who bats at number 8 or 9, which is what they've done for so long. So I chatted to her before the tournament and she said Mandla Mashimbi, the new coach, has sat down with her and said, look, we want you to bat higher up because we need another batter. So you've just got to find a way, kind of thing. And she's been working really hard on her batting. She thinks that she can bat at number 6 or 7. I don't think so. But I suppose we'll have to watch the rest of the tournament to find out. The other option is Karabo Meso, the young wicketkeeper batter. She's 17 years old. She could open the batting, in fact. She can bat that high up. But she's young and she's inexperienced and she's probably not as good as with the gloves as Jafta. So generally, just to get back to your point, Cameron, South Africa didn't move their feet. And I think had they just given themselves a little bit of an opportunity by maybe working around the crease a little bit, they wouldn't have been 19 for 4 and 31 for 6, 38 for 6, was it? And by then, as you say, it was game over. Really, I think once the first 4 were out, it was pretty much just waiting for the inevitable.
I joked at the very start of this show that England have successfully qualified for the semi-finals because in effect what it means now is you can lose to both England and both Australia and India, and you have one more hiccup and you can still make it. By contrast, South Africa, your next match is against New Zealand, and all of a sudden, in the midst of this big round robin group stage, that's an enormous contest. Because if South Africa are perfect from now on, including if they lose to India and Australia, they can still make it. But New Zealand, it doesn't quite become a knockout match, but just frame the tournament. What does this match mean in terms of South Africa's hopes and dreams?
Yeah, exactly. So now South Africa have found themselves in a real hole, as you rightly say, because this New Zealand game could in effect be a quarterfinal clash. And I want to talk a little bit about New Zealand and what they would mean what it would mean for South Africa to come up against them, because this is a side that South Africa was supposed to beat at last year's T20 World Cup final. They got in there. Everybody thought New Zealand. are completely useless. How did they get to the final? It'll be easy. The trophy's coming home and Bob's your uncle. And that didn't happen. And South Africa were absolutely stunned by a really proactive New Zealand batting performance. They were able to just get a whole lot more runs than I think any of us thought they would. And South Africa couldn't come back from that. So I think New Zealand are a real banana skin side for South Africa. They had Australia in trouble at 120 for 5 or 6 in their opening match. And if you get South Africa in that position, it could end up, very much like it did today. South Africa need to figure out how they're going to bat against New Zealand. They're going to have to, I think, bring Dirksen back, push Sonelis down, bring Chloe Tryon up. These are simple fixes, but if they don't come off, I suppose it could look quite bad. And then, there's nothing that we can really say about the bowling because South Africa only bowled 14.1 overs, so that there's so little to talk about there. But we saw from New Zealand's batting, the way that Sophie Devine played, for example, against Australia, New Zealand have a lot of resolve and a very good batting lineup. And so South Africa will need a strong total to at least put them under some sort of pressure. So, the games are really difficult for South Africa. It's not just that it's New Zealand next, it's India after that. And I think in the first week, if things go badly, they could be out of the tournament.
Well, it's so interesting how the fixture list, everyone plays the same games, but the order in which you do things does matter. So South Africa, you've started with England, New Zealand, India. So all of a sudden you can be 0 from 3 or 1 from 3 and having to save the tournament. England, depends how you want to frame it. They've won the match against South Africa, then they go Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Pakistan, and so they can get themselves ahead and basically be like, we can lose against India and Australia and New Zealand in our final 3 matches and still be there. You can't. The framing is
not ideal.
It makes
if that is to happen.
Not ideal for either way. I think everyone knows it's going to be a big net run rate boost. England's net run rate is 3.77 now. I don't really know what that means. I've never really understood net run rate. And of course, South Africa's net run rate is minus 3.77. Basically, it means England have a win 0.2. It's like 1.2 wins, basically, because you give yourself such a buffer.
And just to put it in context, Cameron, it's almost double Australia's net run rate, which is, that's enormous, right? If we're looking at it from that point of view, it's more than double. Gosh,
1.8.
If we get to a net run rate crunch, which I think we could have 5 teams competing for those 4 spots, then this is the match that gets England in it. And I have so many flashbacks that I just want to mention to you, which when you mentioned 0 from 3, that was South Africa's men's team at the 2019 World Cup. They were out of the tournament after the first 3 games. And this is kind of reminding me of that. And the other thing I remember is South Africa's men's team at the T20 World Cup, the one that was played in the UAE, where they labored to a victory over Bangladesh and the net run rate suffered and they didn't get into the semi-finals because of that. So these are all things that South African cricket has seen before and know how to deal with, or should know how to deal with. And they just weren't able to.
It's a lot of pain. There's a lot of pain involved in sporting South Africa. It's just like we know how to deal with these things. And you had to win the Red Bull competition for the first ICC. Oh, I don't know. Firdose, I want to talk a bit about England because I was confused and conflicted coming into this competition because, of course, on the one hand, I of course want England to do well. I woke up today and I was excited to watch them. On the other hand, I was so frustrated and angry when they took the entire squad on a 3-week training camp or 2-week training camp to Abu Dhabi, which directly clashed with the end of the domestic season and meant that, for instance, Emma Lamb was having a net in Abu Dhabi rather than winning the one-day cup for Lancashire at home, and Tilly Courtine-Coleman, rather than playing in the semi-final for Surrey, was having a net in Abu Dhabi when she wasn't part of the England squad, so she was just there practicing, and they'd had a week's rest after the 100, and it as both a journalist and a fan was so frustrating because from a journalist's point of view, I was like, I don't actually think this is beneficial to them. They're removing themselves from the crunch end of a season when the criticism of this setup is they struggle in high pressure environments. And then the fan in me, having followed the start of the new tier 1 structure, which had been brilliant. It'd been so much fun over here. Storylines were developing. We had Susie Bates over. We had amazing overseas. We had all the England players playing. It was great. And I went, well, hang on, this isn't the competition I started watching. You kind of ruined the ending. And so I feel like decisions should have consequences, And the consequence of what, in my opinion, England's silly decision was a kind of world record victory, which doesn't make sense in my head. I was kind of ready for it not to quite add together, but they looked good and they looked balanced. The fact that Natsiva Brunt can bowl again, and the fact they're in a World Cup that's in India and Sri Lanka, they just go with two seamers, and the difference that makes is you have Alice Capsey at 7 rather than M. Arlott, for instance. And that basically means your batting is stacked. Like M. Arlott can play. She got a wonderful century earlier this year. But Alice Capsey can really play. And all of a sudden, England, rather than being this kind of brittle team that people talk about, they're gonna be pushovers, you look at the lineup and you go, wow, they've got loads of options across all bases. They famously, when they had when it was Glenn rather than Linsey Smith, they had the left arm spinner, the right arm spinner, and the leggy. Now they don't have that because they've got Linsey Smith instead. But how quickly things change, and we're still just going to hold fire a little bit, just because it seems like such an anomalous victory. It was so bizarre, and it was a complete capitulation from South Africa. But promising signs so far for England, and I will. Yeah, I'm just still angry. Why did they go home? Why did not go home? Why did they go to Abu Dhabi? Didn't make any sense. It ruined the
Which might, in fact, be everybody's second home in cricket anyway, right? Why did they go to everybody's second home in cricket anyway? I wanted to say, Cam, on Lauren Bell, who I was here in the South African summer, and I saw her in the Test match firsthand, and kind of had a chat to her about her remodeled bowling action, and obviously now getting more outswing than in-swing as a result of that. But today, when she still wants to produce the in-swinger, we saw it, and it was there, and it was the ball that bowled Tasman Brits, and she's looking so good in terms of what she can do. And swing is going to play a huge role at this tournament, especially when they go to Colombo, where, as we saw yesterday in the game between Pakistan and Bangladesh, it's very, very humid, and Marufa Akhtar had the ball hooping about the place. So I'm expecting Lauren Bell to make a really big impact once they get to Sri Lanka, and to have a very, very good tournament.
England's bowling figures so satisfying for everyone. All 5 bowlers in on the act, getting wickets. Lauren Bell, she got her 1 wicket, but it was a good one. 3 for Linsey Smith, 2 for Natsiva Brunt, including off her first ball back. Up next, the Hall of Fame. But first, this episode is brought to you by Lacuna Sports. Focus on your game. Lacuna has your kit covered. Their brand mission is to remove barriers for women and girls who are serious about their cricket, giving them the freedom to step onto the pitch feeling confident, comfortable, and focused on performance, and not restricted by their kit. They're pioneering a new era for women's sports. They're the leading provider of female-specific cricket wear, and the first brand solely dedicated to creating bespoke kit for women and girls. Their kits, they reflect a wide range of body types, personal preferences, and cultural needs, and they're used by players who play for all 18 counties in the UK. And I think Jeff said this yesterday, but there's approximately 70% of teenage girls drop out of sport globally, with kits often cited as one of the deterrents to sport. It doesn't fit properly. It's not made for them. Lacuna Sports is making a difference there. We'll be right back after this break. It's the Hall of Fame. Got there eventually, Firdose, and I'm going to kick us off with my one. England won by 10 wickets. There was one review for South Africa where Tammy Beaumont and LBW, the shout went up. And Tammy Beaumont was so confident that she wasn't out. As her fate was being decided, she called for a change of gloves, because she was like, I'm going to need new gloves. So I know I'm not out. So it was a day of dominance for England, and I enjoyed that little tidbit. What about yourself?
I'm going to go for the Hall of Notoriety and just string you all South Africa's lowest totals. Their second lowest total at a World Cup after 51 against New Zealand. Their lowest total against England after 77 was the previous lowest. This one is 69. And their third lowest ODI score overall. So a really poor day for them from a batting perspective. But also an interesting one is that this is not the first time they've been demolished by England like this at a World Cup. I just felt like rewinding to 2013, where England also bowled them out in the 70s, won the match by 7 wickets. And it's so interesting because that was before the professional era. But who I will add to my Hall of Notoriety is that 2 players from the South African team then were in the South African team now. And that's Marizanne Kapp and Chloe Tryon. No. Yeah, they're not going to like that one, are they?
That's a tough day. That is
That's
tough. Chloe
tough
Tryon,
2 days.
my last stat, and we will go away. Chloe Tryon, I liked it. It made me chuckle a little bit when South Africa just copied England, and they went, Chloe Tryon, you open the bowling. Work for Linsey Smith, work for England. Have a go.
Yep.
Didn't work as well. That was it.
No.
Firdose, this has been the Final Word Daily. The final word, well, yeah, Women's World Cup Daily. It's brought to you by Lacuna Sports. England, they're on the board with a thumping 10-wicket win over South Africa. South Africa, they've already got a massive match pending against New Zealand. Thank you, Firdose, and we'll be back with you again tomorrow with a new combination of hosts and more Final Word coverage of the World Cup. See you then.